So part of what we can also do is let go of those old stereotypes and say, I can be creative in the things that are really me and that matter to me. I don't have to do everything, but let me have what I know is mine. And so that's one of the liberating tools that we get as we age.
Hi, and welcome to Beyond Empty Nest. I'm your host, Jody Silverman, speaker, mentor, and Chief Dare Officer at Moms Who Dare. Every Thursday, I'll share stories of midlife transformation, happiness tips, and dare you to see the opportunities waiting for you so that you can make this next chapter even better than the last. If you're ready to dare, I'm ready to dare with you. Let's get into today's episode. Are you still trying to figure out what you want to be when you grow up? Well, that exact question popped into my mind over 10 years ago. I was in my mid-40s, and I had that feeling, that gut feeling that there was something else I was meant to be doing. And I know I'm not alone in feeling this way. But what happens next for most of us is that we start to use that left side of our brain, the logical side of our brain, to try and figure out, what do I want to be? What do I want to do? What do I want to have more of in midlife? I know that's what I did. When instead, what really needs to happen is to turn off that left side and switch over to the right side of our brain. Allow the right side to speak to us, because the right side of the brain is known as the feminine energy side, the creative side of our brain. And that, my friends, is exactly what our guest today is going to help us do. Our guest, Sally Jean Fox, is going to help us to find your muse and help us to reinvent ourselves creatively. She is a writer, a performer, an artist, and a coach, helping women tap in to their creativity and shape new stories about the future. She's the author of Meeting the Muse After Midlife, a journey of meaning, creativity, and joy. And Sally's right here on Beyond Empty Nest. So welcome, Sally.
Thank you so much, Jody. And I am so delighted to be with you. I love your energy.
Oh, right back at you. Sally and I, see, I'm the lucky one. I get to meet my guests first. So we've had conversations before. I've attended a workshop you hosted. And, I love this conversation because I do think so many of us tend to dive into the masculine energy that, and I'm not talking about gender here, but it's called the masculine energy, that left side of our brain, the logic, when it really is learning how to flip it over to the right side to let our creativity through. And I know that we're going to talk about this in a little bit. There's so many of us that don't believe that we have creativity, and creativity is more than we think it is. And you're going to help us with that. But before we do, and before we dive into how, we're going to find our muse and reinventing ourselves creatively, I always love when my guests share a little bit of their stories, because it's through our stories, and I know you're a believer in this, that's creativity, through our stories that, people can really relate and see and realize, I'm not alone in this journey. So what brought you to where you are today, to writing a book and talking about our muse?
Well, I'll take you back to when I was 48. And I document the story at the very beginning of Meeting the Muse After Midlife, because unfortunately, I didn't have a collective like you're helping to create, and I didn't have anyone preaching at me. I just found myself in a huge attack of hormones and a lot of doubt. And they kind of collided, which is a very, very dangerous place to be, because you don't really know, am I supposed to change my life or have the hormones taken over? In my case, it was probably both. But at 48, I would have called myself successful. I had the kind of career I would have dreamed of in my 30s. I was teaching at leadership development. I'd had a great position in a university. I was consulting. I was coaching. And I had many of the things in life I wanted. I had a husband and a great meditation community. I had my own house. It was all good. And yet, and I think this is a place that your listeners will understand. It's the and yet.
Yes.
It was all good. But I knew that there was some piece of my life that was missing. And you refer to the feminine. And at the time, I didn't have any construct about it. but I knew that there was a side of life I was missing because I had been ambitious and I had been driven. And I felt like at times I was like a hamster on an achievement wheel,
Oh, yeah.
going faster and faster and faster. And what was dropping out was that sense of pleasure and ease and beauty and quiet and deep intuition. And it wasn't like I didn't have these things within me. I did. And I've always been super intuitive, but I didn't honor them in the same way. Because you know what I was getting rewarded for, as you well know,
The achieving and the doing.
The achieving and the doing, and the number of degrees I had, and I'd done that, and the rank and the number of people who knew me or whatever it was. Those things were the measure, not these more subtle domains.
Yeah. No, and that's kind of what I was leading into and when I opened our episode, I too had a very successful career and was winning awards and achieving and doing, and I wasn't paying attention to my inner voice and my intuition. And that's what this is all about finding your muse and reinventing yourself creatively. And I know, because when I attended your workshop a couple of weeks ago, you asked a very powerful question. You asked how many people have ever been told that they're not creative. And that leads me to like the first thing I would love to address is that you say that we all live within stories and that we can reinvent our past stories. And these stories limit our ability to create. So talk through that, because you really hit home with me. You hit a nerve with me, a good nerve, because I was told, not that we weren't creative, I was told we're not an artistic family. We're not creative. And I am, but not in the way it was defined. So I love that you say that.
And those are the stories we need to roll back, because there are stories and we all grew up with them. And for a lot of them, the stories about what we could and couldn't do set in around the time we were 10, if not earlier. And you take a group of people, if you're consulting with a group of women, and ask them, how many of you think that you can sing freely? How many of you feel confident just dancing on your own? How many of you feel like you have a desire to make art? Whatever it is, you could see the faces beginning to constrict, and that kind of voice that, no, not me. I was told that I can't carry a tune, or when I sing, I'm always off pitch, or I'm not artistic. I can't draw. There are all of those things. But if you take them back to their very origin, you usually find a lie. Something that somebody told you in some context that really wasn't true.
Yeah.
And those messages come with a lot of emotional heft. And the thing about stories, people can tell us stuff all the time, but they're just certain stories that we acquired when we were young that came with a knife. We thought we could sing, and then someone told us we couldn't.
Right.
And then boom, it's there. And then for the rest of our lives, we carry that. And it can be a self-reinforcing prophecy, because truthfully, if someone told you you can't carry a tune and you sound awful, you open your voice to sing. Do you think your most beautiful voice is going to come out?
Oh, no.
No, it's going to be like, I don't want anybody to hear me, that kind of thing. And in any of the creative arts, because they go so far beyond music and dance and art and all that. But we get this negative reinforcement.
We do. And it does. You say it limits our ability to create. Because I was one of those kids who was too embarrassed to sing. When I finally was given an opportunity, I just lip sync.
Yeah.
I just mouthed the words in the choir. I was scared to sing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the great thing, Jody, and the really great thing, and the thing that I'd like to stand on a soapbox and preach about it, is that many of those stories, not all, but many of the stories can be undone. And like, for example, with the voice, if you were with a group of people who just delighted in your voice, however it sounded, and gave you a safe space to let it out, I promise you that within 6 months, or probably a lot less, you'd be singing freely, despite what anybody had taught you. And that's the place that we can go at this stage in life, to say, that wasn't ever true and it wasn't very nice. Now I get to do what I want. And no, I'm not going to the Metropolitan Opera. That's never been my goal. But, I don't have to go into the corner when people
Yeah.
say, let's all sing. I can find my joy if this is something I want to do.
Yeah, I don't have to be scared to stand by the piano and sing a Christmas carol if I want to belt it out. Anyway, I want to
No.
I do. I don't care anymore. I'm just going to sing. I love that. And you talk about that. You talk about that after that in midlife and through midlife, that that it is possible to become more creative.
And it is. And part of that being creative is claiming who we are. Because when I say creative, I want to be really clear to listeners. I'm not just saying art and music and writing and things that people think of as the zone of creativity. Like with my husband, it came through fixing cars or the way he listens to people and shares advice. He doesn't care about writing, but in the things he cares about, he's super creative. And so part of what we can also do is let go of those old stereotypes and say, I can be creative in the things that are really me and that matter to me. I don't have to do everything, but let me have what I know is mine. And so that's one of the liberating tools that we get as we age.
I love that. See, so just giving yourself the permission that, and that's like a mantra. I'm creative in the ways that are meaningful to me. That's a great mantra.
Right.
That's how we can begin letting that go and embracing our creative side. And I love how you bring it out and you really say, it's not about drawing. It's not about singing. It's not about writing a book. It could be all about that. It could be all about that. I mean, just to share, really, you're making me think about this. How I realized that I was creative is my mom and I co-created and self-published a part guide, part journal that's sold on Amazon to support moms as they drop their kids off in college. And when I got the first copy in my hands, I went to her and I said, and she's the one who say, we're not artistic or creative people. I said, okay, who's not artistic and who's not creative? I said, we are, Mom. We are.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. And so I think there are a couple of things that you're giving us, Jody. One is that sometimes it can be really useful to have a community of people or a few good friends who get it. So it's like having someone who comes up to you and says, hey, look at this. Look at your book. Don't ever forget this. Look at your piece of art. Don't ever forget this. And you go, well, yeah, well, yeah. And they say, stop it. Just stop it. And you go, oh, okay. And you'll do exactly the same thing for them. So in my book, I give great acknowledgement to the couple of friends, actually, the little community that has stood with me. We all need that. Because there are a lot of voices in our head. I call them the gremlins,
Yeah.
They know how to get us and they will. Yeah. So we need reinforcement, and it can come from community, and it can also come from trusting the muse within us.
All right, so talk about the muse. First of all, define muse.
Okay.
And talk more into the muse, because this is the title of your book. It's really, it's at the heart of what you do, is about each of us carrying the muse within us. So go ahead, talk into that.
Well, the muse in history has always been the source of inspiration for our creative powers. Mm-hmm. People, whether it's a Greek goddess or, the artist muse and stuff, often it's seen as something outside of us that inspires us, or even a person. But I want to make it a little broader. And I could say it's whatever connects us to our inner core and allows us to hear who we really are and what we can create. Now, in my case, I had a whole story there, because I felt the muse as a presence who began to just talk to me. And I had conversations with her over a period of a year. And it was absolutely delightful. And I love the sense that I had this kind of dignified older British lady having tea with me and giving me a few little nudges and hints about how I could pursue my creative path. It was wonderful. But a lot of my friends don't have a little British lady, and they don't need it, because they will find that same muse when they go out in nature. They'll find that muse when they have a deep meditation. They'll find that muse when they pray and they say, please, I need inspiration. I need to know which way to go. And then they hear, because they listen, they hear the still small voice coming in. Now, I call all of that the muse, and it'll come to you in the way that it does. The trick, and the most important thing I could say about it, is you have to listen. You have to listen, say yes, and be ready to act. Because the muse doesn't hang out with somebody who isn't listening. And the muse will give you everything, if you will.
Oh, I love that definition. Oh, that's spirit. That's muse. The muse is, some people call that spirit. Some people call that angel. Some people call it universe. But I love the idea of muse. And I've never used that word. So, when I met you and we talked about it, I was really excited for you to I think this is really the people that our audience right now, like, it's a beautiful way to think about it. Beautiful way.
Yeah.
If you can get quiet, your muse will speak to you in the way you're ready to hear it.
And for me, I know there are people who speak about the muse, and Elizabeth Gilbert is one of them. And she talks about how the muse will sometimes come into town and then the muse will leave, and you got to grab the great idea when the muse is around. For me, I wanted a muse I could count on. For example, I wanted to be able to go into my office or my writing cabin on the really tough days and just sit down and say, Muse, I need a little help here. I don't wait 2 weeks for you to accidentally come through town. I need help. And she'd always be there. And I do believe that when we settle in with that kind of open-hearted request, the muse will show up in whatever way she does. So that's who we need, because life is pretty hard out there. And there's a lot of chaos and a lot of really difficult stuff, whether in the world or just as you work with moms who are facing an empty nest. They can be tough times. So wouldn't it be nice to know that when it is tough, you can count on this inner voice, and then you can go create something.
Oh, I love this. I love this conversation. So you can invite your muse in, call on her to come visit you. You don't have to wait for it to come. Invite her in. So to reinvent ourselves creatively, number one, what I'm hearing you say is we all have the stories. To get in touch with what that story is that's keeping us small, preventing us from calling on our muse, and go back and figure out when that story started to develop for yourself. And really question that story. Is that really true? No, it doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to be, because it's limiting it. And then embracing midlife. I think there's so much empowerment as a midlife woman. When I say midlife, I'm talking about 45, 65, 75, 80. I don't care. It's anything above 45. Because there are women, we're of all different ages and generations, just doing new and beautiful things. And then to call on your muse, then where can you best, when did your muse first find you? Like, what were you doing?
Well, I have to say it in two different ways, because I think I've been hearing that little inner voice directing me for a long time.
Yeah.
I just didn't have a word for it. And then the Isabel, my older English lady, dropped in around age 62. Yeah.
Okay.
And stayed with me for a while.
Wow.
So, yeah. But you made a point, Jody, that I wanted to underscore. It was so brilliant, because we have to claim our ages. And I think that you are inviting, your folks to do that. And I want to really support that, because I did a talk, you can find it on my website, called 60 is not the new 40.
I saw
even
that.
It sounds kind of, 60 is the new 40, blah, blah, blah. No, you go, 60 is the new 60. And let's bring it on. And when those of us who are showing what 60 can look like or 70 can look like, when we dare to claim our ages, it kind of inspires everybody. And
Yes.
I'll ask people, how old are you? And it's because I want to say, yeah, to whatever age they are, and invite people to claim it. There's way too much ageism in our culture, and the way that we undo it is claiming our ages.
Yeah. And that's one of the limiting beliefs that a lot of women in midlife buy into, is that it's too old to do something new. You wrote a book. I haven't even yet begun. I'm 57, and I know there's so much more waiting for me. I know there's so much more. So yes. And people, when I meet other inspiring speakers and authors and women such as yourself, Sally, it just reinforces what I believe to be true, that there's so much waiting for all of us. And I think this is a beautiful way to look at a beautiful conversation. When you talk about the muse, when you talk about creativity, I have to tell you, I feel so comforted inside. This is a really beautiful way to talk about this subject of finding yourself and finding your creative self and allowing yourself to listen. And I know that when I'm out walking outside, so I don't put my earbuds in. I don't bring podcasts with me. I intentionally have to listen to podcasts because when I go walking, I like to just walk. When I cook, I just like to cook. Those are that's when my muse comes to visit me. And I haven't been making room for my muse. And you're reminding me to go do it. So I appreciate that. I do. And we're going to show everybody for who's watching on YouTube what your book looks like again. And it's called
Meeting the Muse After Midlife, a Journey to Meaning, Creativity, and Joy. Because it really is about the search for a meaningful story about the years ahead, a story we feel like living into for the next decades of our lives. I don't sugarcoat aging. It can be rough. Our bodies can change in ways that we don't like, and we may face loss. But when we invest in our creative selves and we invest in our imagination, that's a long-term investment that will pay off for the rest of our lives because we will never lose that.
I'm not saying anything after that. That's perfect. That's a perfect way. Well, I will link to your book. We will definitely put that in the show notes. And it's now time, Sally, for our dare.
I can't wait to offer this dare. I invite listeners to listen for that one thing, that one little creative thing they've always wanted to do, where they felt like for any reason there was an I can't. And I dare us all to go beyond that I can't, to reinvent the story, and then to do one small thing that proves that in some small way you can. So I dare you to reclaim the creative self that never was lost, but is just waiting to come out.
Oh, that's a great dare. I love this dare. And at the time that this is coming out, it's the beginning of a new year. So what a great dare. And everybody, you know what I'm going to say next. What was it that Sally said today that just flipped that light switch on in your brain, that released the I can't to make room for the I can? Something was said today. I know it was. So let us know. If you're on YouTube, let us know in the comments. If you're listening to this on your favorite podcast platform, leave us a review. Let us know. I will make sure Sally gets your message. Share this with a fellow friend that you know can use a little inspiration to let go of the I can'ts, make room for your muse, and let your muse come in so that you can unleash your creative spirit, because we're waiting for it. The world is waiting for your creativity. I love that. Sally, thank you so much.
Thank you. It's a joy to talk to you, Jody.
Oh, thank you. And as I always say, everybody,
dare on.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Beyond Empty Nest. Head over to jodysilverman.com for our full show notes, more information, and additional resources to support you through empty nest and midlife. I'll see you next Thursday. Dare on.